host this. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm not going to use a presentation. Just going to share some perspectives. And I must say, coming back to media industry for now almost 4 years, it's been really exhilarating for me. So you might wonder why back to media industry. So I actually did a bunch of really fun stuff, really cool stuff in rich media. It, of course, goes back about 20, 25 years when I was in New York. And we built for the first time a very, very interesting progressive rich media player, which could play on the same window, so to speak, a combination of audio, video, 3D VRML, panoramic scenes, all interweaved and interleaved, and would do it through a player, because no such player existed at that point in time, which was downloaded in a progressive manner, and of course a rich media file that streamed. Now streaming, progressive players, all of these things were absolutely brand new 25 years or so back. These are given now today. So it was very interesting, and at that point in time we were partnering with a company called DoubleClick, which is still around, which is trying to make banner advertising a little bit more interesting. So a lot of my work and a lot of my patents have been in the area of rich media, but of course 25 years back. So it's very exciting to be back in the media industry. And what I'd like to use the next 15 or so minutes and then open it up for Q&A is to share some perspectives of the kind of digital transformation that's going on now, which for me is a little bit of a deja vu, because I've sort of seen that many years back, and now I'm seeing a lot of it happen today. And it's been an honor and a privilege that I've had a chance to spend a decade and a half in the telecoms industry. And when you look at the telecom industry, there's been a very interesting transformation going on there as well, and it's still going on, where basically the industry moved from a voice industry to a data industry and now a content industry. And what's very interesting is the lines obviously are blurring between telecoms and media. And when OTT came in, and OTT came in a big way about 5 or so years back, one might argue a little bit sooner before that, but in a really serious way, where communications no longer required telecom providers, and of course content was their bread and butter in any case. So you see what's happening is, if you look at the 3 C's, which is content, communication, and commerce, if you look at the 3 C's coming together, you realize they're actually coming together in a very, very big way, be it you being a player in the telecom industry, or be it you being a player in the media industry. It really doesn't matter. So all 3, communications, content, and commerce, are all coming together. And obviously all of that require the 4th C, which is context. And context has to do with everything, where you are, what time of day, where are you socially in your social graph, and so on and so forth. So the 4 C's, it's a confluence of the 4 C's that's really driving a lot of the digital transformation that I'm going to talk about. And so it's interesting, and I'm sure you're going to hear a very lively panel when you come about to the panel part of this discussion, that communications, content, commerce, all within a context are really converging. It's strange, everything is a C right now, but that's really what's happening. So just as in the telecommunications industry, you have the OTT players where people would prefer to make a Skype call or a WhatsApp audio call rather than make a mobile phone call. Just like that, even in today's media space, you've got the traditional players, such as Hindustan or HT Media, where I work right now, and you've got the pure play digital players. You're going to hear a lot of it in the panel, and the names that were mentioned, they're all coexisting, and business models are being evolved. So let me talk a little bit about digital transformation and kind of share the experience that I've been driving, or we've been driving at HT Media Group. The group, of course, is a very old group. It's actually approaching 100 years. And interestingly, if you look around the globe for companies that have lasted 100 years, you'll find very few. So built to last, or good to great, is not easy. And this has been a group that took a little bit of a while to jump onto the digital bandwagon. And so when we set about our transformation journey, we sort of asked ourselves one very simple question. Are we going to create a digital island, or are we going to drive transformation in a converged manner? And we came up with an answer that said we're going to drive it in a converged manner, as an integrated transformation play, rather than create a different digital company and a different traditional company or your print company or radio company. So we drove our transformation, and we're still driving our transformation along 5 planks. And the transformation is more or less dubbed as E to I, going from an enterprise style of operation to an internet style of operation. And the 5 planks have to do with, first and foremost, what is the consumer or the customer looking for in terms of content consumption. So that's the behavior that we are trying to understand. The second plank is obviously the evolution of the business model from pure play print advertising to how do you monetize in the digital space. And that's not easy because we are driving this company for a P&L, not just for valuation. And so it's not just an eyeball game alone. And so how do you build it profitably is a very interesting question. The third plank is how do you then reorient your internal organization? Do you go hive off a separate organization to do digital stuff and keep the old traditional guys doing the print or radio for that matter? Or do you kind of bring it together? The fourth is, okay, depending on that strategy, how are you going to organize the spaces you're going to sit in? Are you going to have a different building, a different location? Or are you going to put them all together, same building, different floors, or the same floor? And finally, what's the underlying technology that you're going to use to make all of this stitch together and work well? And our answers to that, I'm going to work it backwards. I'm going to start with, well, not backwards, somewhere in the middle and then work it backwards. I'm going to start with the strategy part where we said we're going to drive it as an integrated play, which I mentioned. And then we said on the people front, let's first talk about the space. We're going to create one integrated newsroom. And in this newsroom, we're going to create a whole bunch of content, be it for your newspapers or for your online properties. And of course, we do have a few pure play digital properties as well, like, for example, desimartini.com and so on and so forth. And we've kept those a little bit separate, but not that far apart. So they're also fairly well stitched, and there are bridges being built. So we took a conscious call to build an integrated newsroom, where in this newsroom, we've got the workspaces organized in a hub-and-spoke model, where based on the topics or based on the context or based on the domains that they're working in, be it sports or be it entertainment, et cetera, you've got both the traditional guys and the digital guys sitting together. And that was a very, very big and a bold move. And obviously what that meant is we need to now retrain some of our people. We need to reorient some of our people to be able to talk and walk digital while they also are doing stuff in the traditional world. So it used to be that our newsroom conferences used to be held around 4 in the evening. Now our newsroom conferences are held first thing in the morning. It's a 24/7 operation. So the same guy who's used to saying, all right, I'll wander into work at 11 in the morning, I just got to get the paper out only by night, it's completely changed his life. And that cultural transformation has been the most important and the most difficult part of the digital transformation that we're undergoing. And that's what is operational right now, not too far from here on KG Marg. We've got a very large 42,000 square foot integrated newsroom where all of this is running right now. I wish I could invite you in. Maybe some of you I can. But it's working. And it's live. And it took us about a year to get the people out, get the room built, bring them back in. But that is not the end of the job. That's just the beginning of the job. You've got to now retrain your people. You've got to teach them new skills. You've got to make them understand what Chartbeat really means. What does it mean to look at your analytics scores? You've got to make them understand what it means to really have your story trend. We've got large video walls, obviously, as you'd imagine, to look at all the trend analysis across both integrated and pure play digital plays. So we're changing the company. We're changing a 100-year-old company, and that's live, and that's happening as we speak. Now, to do that, you've not only got to retrain your people, you've got to inject new talent in, and you've got to mix the old and the new, both literally and figuratively. And that's another cultural challenge. And it's very interesting and very, I would say, somewhat easier to say, hey, let's go form a small startup, get all the youngsters in, bunch them in a room, and let them do what they want and have fun, and serve Kool-Aids and possibly margaritas. But it's another thing to say, hey, we're a listed company, heck, we're 2 listed companies, and start doing stuff that becomes a little cool, while you're also doing stuff for which your brand stands for certain things. So that's a very, very interesting thing. So if you really look at our day-to-day dynamics that's going on at work, the people aspect and the cultural aspect is the most important one. The space aspect, number 2, the space aspect has come together. That's frankly very easy to do. It's tables and chairs, some false flooring, a good ceiling, obviously good ambience, and some smart workspace management, and of course, a bunch of technology that powers all of it. That's done. Then comes to the tech stack. Now, the tech stack has to mirror the way you operate. If we really say the same guy or girl is going to write for your online channel, do your A/B testing, as well as create videos, while in the evening, the same thing after the A/B testing then gets finalized for the newspaper, you've got to figure out a technology platform that will allow you to do it in an integrated manner. So we've rolled out integrated CMSs. That's the same CMS that is used for stories that would go online and would also eventually find its place in the newspapers across all 150, 200 editions that we publish every day. And that's a bit tough. You've got to map your workflows, you've got to map your talent, and you've got to have this integrated CMS that works off a common repository to be able to allow our content creators to do what they need to do, while simultaneously beginning to push hard on the video button. And the video button is beginning to be pushed hard, and that's an area where we're just beginning to grow, but obviously that's the future, and that's where everything will happen. So the technology platform has seen a rapid shift, and as we rolled out this technology platform, we embraced both E and I. We embraced large software packages, which are very enterprise style and require gobs of private cloud deployment, and gobs and gobs of both storage and compute running in our own private data center, as well as public clouds and CDNs that are needed to offer the offering to our consumers. So we've got a hybrid cloud that's running as we speak, and that's live. And while we've done that on the enterprise side, a lot of our properties, including some of our large publications, especially in the vernacular, have embraced open source. And we have not built it the enterprise style, we built it the internet style. And our pure play digital properties are all built the internet style. So there's a lot that has been done to embrace both enterprise style deployment as well as internet style DevOps that is needed to roll things out. So that's at the technology layer. So people, space, technology. That's the input. The output that comes out is a new form of content, new things that are coming out on our properties. Be it Desi Martini, I don't know if some of you have seen it or not. We're starting to do some cool stuff over there. Obviously, our branded mastheads have got their own sites, be it hindustantimes.com or Live Hindustan or Live Mint, etc., as well as other properties like Shine, which is our jobs portal, properties like HT Campus, which is allowing in the education space, and our new businesses in education. So be it StudyMate or Bridge, which are pure play new businesses, which are embracing digital. So Bridge, for example, is a business that is a blended learning where 80 to 90% is all digital, and there's only 10 to 15% of face-to-face. StudyMate is the opposite. So Bridge is focused and targeted at the continuing professional, whereas StudyMate is focused on the school students. And there it's 80 to 90% face-to-face and 10 to 15% digital. So the mix of brick and mortar and digital is there even in our education businesses. Radio, of course, is primarily radio and broadcast at this point in time, but there are a bunch of things we're doing in the digital space there, where we're getting radio, dedicated in-store radios that are being fed to thousands of stores. And so it's not about just taking the radio channel, so to speak, and playing it online, but it's about using things in a smart way. And as you can imagine, a lot of videos get produced as a result of a lot of stars coming over to our radio stations across the country. So in the business model and the consumption plank, so there is a continuing evolution. We're finding that obviously it's very difficult and very hard to get paid content. It's very hard, and but obviously native tends to get very interesting. I know there are many pure player digital players out here who will tell you a little bit more about native, what they can do. But probably the most exciting thing lies in the behavior and the consumption pattern, which is where analytics play a very, very huge role. And so if you look at the C's, the confluence of content, context, commerce, all within a certain context, if you look at all of that, obviously where technology is going to help us and will continue to help us is going to be in the areas of smarter video and more fine-grained video and video analytics. Is going to be in the area of AI and machine learning, I think that's going to be very interesting because that will help us hone in a little bit more in terms of understanding behavior and understanding consumption, areas that we are beginning to experiment in and play around with. And of course, eventually, when you weave in context, context today, if you take in location, place, et cetera, has got a bunch of sensors everywhere, be it your automotive, be it your malls, et cetera. So IoT will weave in at some point in time. So we see this as a very exciting play for a traditional player, almost a 100-year-old company, to say we're going to go digital, to take a bold move that says we're going to do it integrated and not as a digital island, to say we're going to go about it with these 5 planks of transformation: people, most important; cultural, most important; most difficult; space, easier; technology, hard but solvable; and then leading to business models, difficult because you've got to run profitably, you're listed; and then, of course, understanding consumption behavior. And I'm sure all of us know that our next generations, the little kids that are out there, it's very hard to predict what they like, but we know one thing for sure: they'll never touch a newspaper. So it's very, very interesting. So I think we are blessed that we're living in a very interesting industry, media and entertainment. I feel very lucky to be part of this industry back again, almost after 20, 25 years of inventing some very interesting technologies at that point in time in the US. But probably some of the harder questions that face us is media and entertainment going to remain as an isolated industry? The comms guys, the telecom guys are here. So when you now see communications and content getting bundled, which is happening today, I'm not going to say it's going to happen in the future. It's happening today. What does that do to business models? Do the consumers pay for pipes or do they pay for content? When it's all bundled at a fixed fee, gone are the days of tariff plans. So I think business model innovation is going to be extremely challenging in the coming days. We've got to be smart about it. We've got to be smart about how we make and run businesses profitably. Fortunately, the appetite to consume content will only be insatiable, and it will always be on all screens. I've been talking about all screens for more than a decade now. And so we are blessed with that, but can we make money along the way? And I think that's going to be a challenge for not just this industry that's mentioned here, but for the combined communications, media, and entertainment industry, the CME industry, as we'd like to look at. So I'd urge that as you go through the evening, let's look at CME in totality, which is communications, media, and entertainment, because the lines don't exist. I won't even say they're blurring. They don't exist. Literally today in the market, they don't exist. They might not be implemented that way, but they don't exist. Definitely not so in the consumer's mind. And how do we evolve business models? Technology will help us, and there's a lot to be done. I know we've got AWS here who's going to talk to us about it. We've got To The New who's going to talk to us about technology and so on and so forth. For someone like me with my experience set who's seen decades of things and tectonic shifts, it's a very exciting time to be in this space. But can we do some breakthrough innovation? I think that'll be very interesting to find out and figure out in this panel. So I'll pause. So while I've talked a little bit about how a very large traditional company has gone through digital transformation, my larger message was to bring my broader experience set over several decades to the table and say, can you guys brainstorm a little bit about CME and see what does that mean in terms of both behavior patterns and business models? The rest of it will just follow. But tackling that is not going to be straightforward. So with that, I'll pause. I think I have time for a few questions. If so, I'm happy to take a few questions. Are there any questions?
I think Dr. Jay Menon mentioned quite well that it's time when you move from enterprise style to internet style. I think that's the message, and it's very loud and clear. So is there any question?
Cool. I think all's clear.
I think it's a wonderful audience.
Either all's clear or everything's muddled up, but that's okay.
So Menon, you have really articulated the message, and I'm sure everybody has grabbed the message. That's why there is no question. If there are any questions, they can be taken offline.
Hold on. Where do you see this media ecosystem and industry going in the next 5 years or 10 years from now? How do you visualize that?
I wish I knew the answer. But I do know one thing for sure. I think there's going to be continuous reinvention of business model. That means both revenue and cost. And you'll see a lot of actions on both lines, the top line and the middle belly, across, and more so for traditional players, because I think the pure play digital players like Scoop Whoop who's here, they started a bit later, so they already started with a different cost model. Typically, enterprise plays come with heavier cost models, be it technology, be it people, be it spaces. Thanks to folks like you, Amazon, AWS, and so on and so forth, who have brought forward platform services and cloud services and so on and so forth, cost models can change, can be more variabilized. So you go from a CapEx-oriented to an OpEx-oriented model. But that will apply a lot more in terms of content generation and content creation. It will apply a lot more in terms of people and organization strengths. It will apply a lot in terms of fixed assets. So I think the industry will evolve both on top line and in the middle belly. And that is already happening. I'm sure all of you are aware of it. That's already happening. But the larger question, if frankly, is what happens when industries collide? When the communications industry collides with the media industry, which has happened. I won't even say is about to happen. It's happened. And more of that will happen. And so when the communications industry is no longer about communications, what do you do? And what happens to media industry at that point in time? And how long will the valuation game go on? At the end of the day, the valuation game is nothing but let's have a hot potato, pass it on. The last guy holding is the fool at the end of the day. So how do you get out of that game? It's not going to go on forever. So I think true businesses have to be created. They have to be true profit and loss businesses. There have to be real monies involved. And so if you recall, and I recall this very well because I was still in my early stages in my professional career, when the first dot-com bubble was created, late 80s, early 90s in the US, and it burst. And I'm sure India has seen a couple of those bubbles as well. So I think this valuation game, we're already seeing a lot happening right now. So I would only say a lot of the evolution of the industry would depend on P&L, not valuation. As much as we'd like to believe it depends on valuation.
There's one more question.
Hi. So you talked about this transformation. I wanted to pick your brains on this transformation that you're talking about is really not innovation. It's kind of forced. What are your thoughts? Because if this was an innovation, this would have been done a decade back by the telcos and the media companies. Do you really feel that it's kind of forced? Otherwise, these giants won't survive? I'm not talking about HT specific. Generally, I mean, the age-old giants, media giants, they won't survive the next decade of it if they don't transform. And so it's like forced.
It goes back to the business model, right? How do these companies make money? Through advertising. Now, advertising makes sense only if it generates a so-called response. So you've got to go back to saying what generates response. I think it's continuously evolving, right? One might say, oh, digital is great, but how much of response does it actually generate? So you've got to go back to the business model. So from that point of view, there isn't really a straightforward answer to that. The transformation was a necessity that had to get done. The only innovation that I can see is doing it either in a converged or an integrated manner, which I think is very bold, versus doing what 99.99% of media companies across the globe have done, which is create a different digital island. That is the only innovation, only one, right? Other than that, it is inevitable. It's the inevitability. It's the old steel mills problem that we all read books about, right? Going to your mini steel mills, right? So that's a given. I go back to business model. At the end, businesses exist to make money, not for valuation alone. Valuation is short-term game. That's why I go back to my opening remarks. How many companies have lasted 100 years? So for companies that seek to last 100 years, while it is seen as forced, it is also seen as something that says, we are going to make this work. So we're going to make make some hard decisions to make it work, and which is what I'm seeing the boldness in where I am right now. But I go back to the macro problem, which is CME. If you guys can debate it during the course of the evening and kind of see where all of that is headed, it'll be interesting to crystal gaze and say, 3 years from now, what's it going to look like? Not even 5 years. Who would have thought? Let me ask a simple question. Who would have thought, whatever, 300 rupees, 400 rupees, all you can eat communications, and nearly all you can eat content, available everywhere, wherever the network works? Who would have thought? Right? It's there today in the market. I don't have to name brands. Everybody is going to eventually converge on that. So when business models change, I think the bigger question is impact on communications, media, and entertainment. What is that kind of digital transformation? I think that's where some of the changes will happen, and we're going to see things happen. Fortunately, in the financial services industry, you're seeing that change already through payment banks and, of course, through mobile payments, and through a lot of stuff that's happening with all the companies like Paytm, MobiKwik, et cetera. So again, go back to commerce, go back to communications, and go back to content, all coming together, all within a context. So companies who know, or ecosystems that know how to interplay with each other there, will actually survive. So jury's out. There isn't really a clear answer on this one. I wish I knew, but it's not that straightforward. By the way, there isn't any global model that we are following. It's not something it happened there, and hence it's going to happen in India. I think we're going to be unique here. Sorry, you had a question.
Yeah. Hi. You talked about the integrated way of working, how you spoke about...
Just an interruption. May you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Shweta. I work with NDTV. I look after the software development and automation. And one thing that I've seen in my company, so now that, I told you that I work with NDTV, is that no matter how much you talk about integrated newsrooms and, getting all your people together to work as one team, on the ground reality is actually quite different, because the talent needed for, say, online news is very, very different from what you need for television, or in your case, in fact, print is, I would say, very, very different, right? So don't you think that no matter how, technically maybe we are able to integrate it, we can have the workflows where news stories are flowing from one platform to another, but the talent itself, people who are creating the content is very different. Is in your company, what's the case? What's your thought on that?
I think that's a very good question, and that's why I said the cultural transformation has been the most difficult and, frankly, the most surprising part. So we also suspected that. We also suspected that there'll be natural Chinese walls on the floor, and that there'll always be the old guys looking at the new guys and saying, that's not me. But we are really surprised. We are genuinely surprised. So it's amazing to see for lack of a better term, the conversion. And the hunger to learn something new is it's very large. So the fallout is not as much as we thought it would be. In fact, we are like I said, we're genuinely surprised.
Sure.
So let's also bear in mind it's only been a year or so now in this journey that we are live with this. And let's give it 2-3 years and see where we go. The other part is, you said online and print. The third part I'll inject is video. Yeah. Video and video creation is another. Obviously short form, not the broadcast variety. Yeah.
I think the rest of the questions can be taken offline. We'll move to the next presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menon.
Thank you.